Hi everyone. I'm going to review solving quadratic equations by completing the square. But before we do that, we're going to talk about perfect square trinomials. So a perfect square trinomial comes from a binomial multiplied by itself. So for example, x plus 5 squared, it means x plus 5 times x plus 5. So after double distributing, I get x squared plus 5x plus 5x plus 25, which simplifies to x squared plus 10x plus 25. So if we look at our answer, we notice that the coefficient of x, or our b term, comes from this number 5 multiplied by itself, added to itself, 5 plus 5, or multiplied by 2. And if we look at our constant, 25, we notice that it comes from 5 times 5, or 5 squared. So we can use that same trick to go ahead and multiply x minus 3 times x minus 3. So our answer is going to come out to x squared. Our middle term is going to be negative 3 plus negative 3, or negative 3 times 2, which is negative 6x. And our last term is going to come out to be negative 3 times negative 3, or negative 3 squared, which is positive 9. And same thing for our last example, x minus 4 times x minus 4 comes out to x squared. Negative 4 plus negative 4 times 2 is negative 8x. And negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. So no matter what, if you have a perfect square trinomial, okay, any of these answers here, we can always find this middle term by multiplying the original constant by 2 and by squaring the constant to get the constant. So if I want to make this trinomial, x squared plus 6x, a perfect square trinomial, I need to use the relationship that we just discussed. So the formula that I have is c equals b over 2 squared. So to find the constant, which is c, I take b, which in this case is positive 6, I divide it by 2 and square it. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. Okay, and this should be positive 9. So this is a perfect square trinomial, and if I were to factor it, I would get x plus 3 times x plus 3, and again we can check. 3 plus 3 gives me the 6, and 3 times 3 gives me 9. Okay, and as a perfect square we can rewrite that as x plus 3 squared. Okay, the trick to get this number right here is to just take half of this term in the middle, 6. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. Negative 8 is b, so I take half of that, or I divide it by 2, and I square it. So I get negative 4 squared, which is positive 16. So positive 16 is my constant. That means that this trinomial is a perfect square, and in factored form, again, you can take half of b, which is negative 4, so x minus 4 squared. And again, we can check it. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, and negative 4 squared is 16. And the last one, b is 12, so I take half of 12 and square it, which is 6 squared, which is positive 36. So I add 36, and that's a perfect square trinomial. And in factored form, it would be x plus 6 squared. Okay, now we're going to take a look at using this to help us solve a quadratic equation. Okay, so for example, x squared plus 14x minus 51 equals 0. So when you want to use completing the square, first of all, the coefficient of x squared should always be 1, which it is in this case. I want to move my constant, which in this case is 51, to the other side. And I get x squared plus 14x equals 51. Now notice I left a little bit of space here because I'm going to make this a perfect square trinomial, so I need to add my constant that would make this a perfect square. Notice I also made a space on the other side because whatever I do to the left side of my equation, I must do to the right side to keep my equation balanced. So I'm going to find the constant, the value of c, based on my value of b here, which is 14. So I take 14 divided by 2 squared, which is 7 squared, which is 49. Okay, so that means that I need to add 49 to both sides. Okay, and now on the left, this is a perfect square trinomial. In factored form, this would be x plus 7. Again, if you just take half of this term, you know the constant. It's x plus 7 squared equals 100. Okay, and then from there, now I can use inverse operations. Because x plus 7 is being squared, I can take the square root of both sides. I get x plus 7 equals plus or minus 10. Okay, and then from there I need to solve for x. I'm just going to rewrite it. So I subtract 7 from both sides to get x alone, and I get negative 7 plus or minus 10, which means that x equals negative 7 plus 10, or 3, and x equals negative 7 minus 10, which is negative 17. So my two solutions are 3 and negative 17.